Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode on Manifold. Today we are going to build up quite a large project. I have been designing this in a creative world for a while, and that is a Nether hub. So far we haven't really had much of a good looking Nether. It's been lots of cobblestone pathways, and we finally were able to build up a tunnel in the Nether, and now we're going to build up a Nether hub for that tunnel to connect to, and we can build more tunnels that lead out from that Nether hub. So we are here and, well, we are here in our base, and we have all the materials gathered up to build this. So 43 stacks of white concrete, 33 stacks of blackstone, 24 stacks of quartz blocks. This took so long to get. But we have all these materials here, and we are going to jump right into a time lapse to show you us building up this Nether hub. So let's dive right in. All right, and here we are in the finished Nether hub. So this is what it looks like from coming out of the Nether portal here. We have our green tunnel that we built up earlier. And so far we don't have any other tunnels installed. So there will be eventually one going out in each of these directions. Just depends on when we get to building it. We have these nice end crystals on these pillars and the sides and go down the stairs. Also planning on carving this out and maybe adding some sort of doorway, maybe a piston door or something here going out into the Nether. Right now we had just carved out a big hole out of the netherite here. So right now there's nothing, as you can see, but we want to sort of be able to just walk out into the rest of the Nether here. And I guess it's a good opportunity to show you the top. So I think in the time lapse, you just saw us putting in the white concrete roof here, but we also added endstone slabs here on top and some, what are these called? Sea lanterns here, some little things. We're not done decorating the top, but I think this part looks pretty nice. We're still figuring out all the decorations, as you can see. But yeah, this is the roof right now. It was a pain trying to get this lit up properly. These sea lanterns kind of seem out of place, but otherwise it's just really dark around here. And also all the sea lanterns on the ceiling and the regular lanterns, but still need to remove a lot of this cobblestone that's not needed anymore. But we can do that later. But yeah, it's been a few days now since we've built this up. And I mean, as you can see, we're still working on the roof, haven't added in the lava yet, but we're pretty happy that it is pretty much done and excited to see what the next large project we're going to work on is. But for now, I think we're just, we're glad that we don't have to gather a bunch more quartz because, yeah, I mean, it took a long time to gather all these quartz blocks. So ultimately, we're glad to be sort of done with it. I think probably our next big project is a storage system for the main base, but we don't really have any concrete plans for when we'll do that yet. So that's pretty much everything for the Nether hubs. So let's get on with the main thing we're going to be working on in this episode, which is a honey farm. So I'm here in a creative testing world to see if I can design a nice honey farm. I know there are probably a lot of very good designs out there that I could just take, and usually that's what I do, but I know that there's a lot of fun in designing your own farms, even if they're not as efficient as possible, and it's not like we need tons of honey for anything, so I'm going to try and design my own thing. I've obviously seen other people's honey farm designs before, so I'm going to be influenced by those, but going to try and not look at them and see if I can't just figure things out on my own. So I think I've got everything mostly figured out. So I have this beehive. I always mix up beehive and bee nest. Yeah, so beehive here with 3 bees. I know that that's the maximum that can be in a hive, or at least that's what I've heard. The flower on the outside, that much is I've seen from other designs. Then I know you can take the comparator output from a beehive. So if you check here, it has a honey level on the far right side, although you may not be able to see that. And it's honey level 1 right now, and this redstone dust is power 1. So that's feeding up into here, and when this has full honey level, which is honey level 5, this dust will be 5, this will be 4, 3, 2, 1, and be able to just barely power the dispenser, which has a bunch of bottles in it. And one thing I haven't checked, so if there is an empty spot in one of these dispensers, the honey bottle just goes back into the dispenser instead of going down into the hopper here. So I did check that when this is full, it will go down into this hopper here. So I'm pretty sure this is probably almost the exact same thing as Omango's. Maybe this part is a little less efficient. When this activates next, which I can speed up happening. Yeah. So that time when the dispenser activated, it went straight into this hopper here rather than going back up. I was afraid that the item might pop out onto this grass block here and I'd have to pick it up from underneath, but it looks like every time it's just gone straight into the hopper, thankfully. So I turned on the day-night cycle for this world and ran a quick tick warp for 2 hours, I believe, and yeah, just over 120 minutes. We got 13 honey bottles, which is 6.4 per hour, according to this, which is like 1.5 honey blocks because 4 honey bottles are needed to make a block. So I think the main limiting factor here is the day-night cycle, because whenever it's night, the bees are not doing anything. In our survival world, though, we usually, unless we're AFKing, will sleep through the night. I usually have a bed with me. So in theory, we should get twice as much if we... twice as much per hour if we don't have the day-night cycle. So I'm going to try... So this is sort of our minimum. We're guaranteed around 6.4 per hour. If I reset this and then do another tick warp for 2 hours, with day-night cycle off. So this time it's always going to be day. Let's see how many honey bottles we're going to get now. So yeah, exactly what we would have expected. Without going into nighttime, we got exactly twice as many honey bottles, 26 instead of 13. So that's sort of our range in terms of what we can expect every 2 hours, right? We either, if we're AFKing and we end up going to night, then we're going to get somewhere closer to 13. But if it is always daytime, if we're sleeping through the night, then we could end up something closer to 26 every 2 hours. So the next thing we need to do is just expand this horizontally. So I designed this in such a way that it would work tileable, and I think that's definitely true. If I was to put another thing here and put the redstone dust here, even though the redstone dust joins up, it won't activate the next dispenser if it powers the first one. So it's designed so that it will only ever get to redstone power 1 here, which won't end up powering this neighboring dispenser. So we should just be able to build this sideways, and it should all just work. Okay, so we actually are running into a problem here. When I start to tile this over, the redstone is no longer pointing towards the dispenser, and so even though it's powered, it's not activating the dispenser. I think I may just have to put target blocks all along here. And that will redirect the redstone and thus cause this to fire, because otherwise the redstone won't point in that direction. So I built up the 8 wide version of this. It's just the same thing extended. I also realized that replacing this, what was a comparator, with just a regular block will do the same thing and is obviously cheaper than a comparator. So replace that there. And I think the target block on top was the best option, so I used that there. And I ran, again, a 2-hour tick warp, and we got, okay, about what we expected. So before we were getting 13 honey bottles per hour. Oh, we're getting some glass bottles. Okay, that's a little odd. We shouldn't have gotten those. Well, anyway, we would expect 104 per hour if this was perfectly efficient. So 13 an hour times 8, since there are 8 modules. There is one other thing that needs to be addressed, though, which is how we refill these dispensers. So pretty much the only spot left is where these slabs are. So I can put hoppers here. So all these hoppers are pointing into these dispensers. So we can't have these as a hopper line, but we can put a hopper line on top of it. The problem is, well, all of these now are going to have to be filled with glass bottles. All of the top hopper line will need to be filled with glass bottles, otherwise it'll prioritize the end first and nothing will ever get to the front. And then obviously the bottom will have to be filled with glass bottles, otherwise it'll just suck out the glass bottles from the top and that won't be filled. So right now each module has 9 slots in the dispenser, 5 slots in this hopper, 5 slots in this hopper. So that's 19 times 64. Well, that's 19 stacks of glass just to fill up the bottles in this single module, which isn't great. So that would essentially mean if I need 19 stacks of glass just to fill up all the glass bottles in this first module, I would need 19 stacks times 8. to fill up each one of these. The other option I can think of would be to have a hopper minecart running on top of all these. So this is sort of the best I was able to do while still minimizing the amount of glass that we would need to collect. So there's just a hopper minecart hooked up to a chest, going across the hoppers to refill all of them. If any hopper is empty, it will automatically trigger the minecart to run across the rails and drop off glass bottles, although quite slowly, because each trip there and back only drops off 2 glass bottles to each hopper. So not super quick, but quick enough to keep up with, how fast this is using glass bottles. And then, of course, it's easy to just add an override switch to fill up the hoppers. Of course, you could also just go through and fill them up manually the first time you run the farm, and every time you come back, if you're AFKing this or something, I don't know, you could just turn this on while it's running if you're not going to leave the area, and it'll be just fine. And of course, I think actually you could probably build this whole thing in one chunk. And so the odds of it running while you sort of leave the chunk and giving minecart problems is minimal, basically. So I think this is a good solution that doesn't require getting more than 9 stacks of glass, basically, for each of these modules. So if we wanted to get more glass, it would have been easier to build up the other system, just have a bunch of hoppers that are completely filled with glass and just back them up, basically, so that you have a supply always of glass to every dropper. But I don't think we're going to be running this long enough. We're running it fast enough, really, for that to matter. So, or that to be worth it, to have so many stacks of glass bottles, hundreds and hundreds of stacks. Of course, we still need 72 stacks? Yeah, 72 stacks. Yeah, I think this is a fine system for what we have. All right, so the next step is to gather everything up and to build it in survival. So I have built up the honey farm in survival. Don't miss that pass. So I have built the honey farm up in survival and added actually some more features. So I think different from what I had in the creative world, there's this piece right here and that piece over there. So let's talk about that piece first. So that is an on-off switch for the farm. So here I can switch this on or off, and this connects to a line of slime blocks. It really could have been anything, just slime blocks were easy because they stuck together, so I only needed one piston. And if you can see there, the slime blocks, when they extend down, will block the redstone, which means none of the dispensers will be able to activate. So the bees will still do their thing, but the dispensers won't try and activate. And that is even more useful because it means we can actually turn the farm off automatically. That's what this line does whenever any of the hoppers are empty. So obviously we can't detect any of the dispensers directly, but if one of the hoppers gets empty, it means that after 64 more dispenses, potentially one of the dispensers could empty, although it's unlikely. But the idea is we can for sure know the farm is safe to use if all of the hoppers have at least one glass bottle in them. And then as soon as one of the hoppers empties, for example, this one, this comparator will turn off, which, well, there's redstone torches under this line right here. And if a comparator were to turn off, the redstone torch under here would get powered on, and so power this line of redstone. And that would send a signal over here to turn off the farm. And also it would send a signal here to send this hopper minecart, which could be refilled with glass bottles, to refill the hoppers here. Now, I also, and that's what this is a switch to turn off that refill feature. So if you're flying around, if you're not standing right here, you don't necessarily want the minecart to be sent off, just because minecarts in potentially unloaded chunks can cause problems. In general, this will be left off unless you're just standing here AFKing the farm, in which case you can leave it on and load in a bunch of glass bottles here so that it will automatically refill and you won't be AFKing for no reason. So I may as well show you how this works. So if this stack were to leave, then this comparator turns off, which turns on this line of redstone, which activates the piston and now blocks off this redstone here. Even if these beehives fill up all the way with honey, the redstone line won't go up to activate the dispensers. We can put these back in here, and you see the farm will now turn back on. Of course, the bees will continue doing their own thing. You can't really stop that, but just the dispensers won't accidentally break themselves. So those were some nice other features I added, and this has been running for a bit, just sort of in the background. I haven't purposely AFK'd it, but it's not too far from our base, so it's loaded fairly often. And I think, how many do we have here? So not a crazy amount, but each one of these stacks is what, four honey blocks, so a stack and a half, I think, of honey blocks, maybe? Yeah, something like a stack and a half of honey blocks. So we don't need a ton all the time. If we did, maybe we'd build something larger, but just letting this run in the background and fill up, and then, you know, we can turn it off and not have to worry about it overflowing or anything. Yeah, should be just fine. It's also cool, you can see the bees down here. Maybe I'll build a little like bee viewing platform or something. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll build a nice sort of design around this. I was contemplating building a bee around this, but it's also kind of large. It could fit, I think. But that would be pretty fun to build, so I think maybe that is something I'll do and just, yeah, make it big. Why not? So yeah, after crafting it all into honey, we have just over a stack and a half of honey blocks, which, yeah, I mean, for us right now is more than enough. And I mean, this is constantly running. Since I crafted it, we've already gotten 8 more, so that's 2 more honey blocks that we could have. But I'm just going to leave this running and use this storage here. And, you know, this will be more than fine, I think. Maybe for some nice doors that we might design, we'll use honey and slime block flying machines or something. But besides that, I can't really think of anything in particular that we would need to use honey for that we couldn't use slime for. I'm sure there are plenty of examples, but none that we're really itching to build soon. But this was definitely just a fun farm, and yeah, now we just don't have to worry about honey. Before, we sort of had this, I forget whether I've showed this in our videos before, but one of my friends on the server made this little, I guess, greenhouse, you could call it, with a bunch of bees. They constantly get stuck over here. It's kind of funny, actually. But this is where I got all the bees from, is breeding them up from in here. So far, just coming in here over the course of like maybe a month or something, and just coming in here every once in a while and doing it, we've gotten 42 honey blocks. And so we've already surpassed that in just a day of running this farm. Yeah, excited to build up a design around that farm as well. I think building the giant pumpkin was pretty fun, so I guess I think this is where we're putting our honey. So to see how fast this farm actually ended up being, I decided to AFK this for 1 hour. And so it's been exactly 1 hour. At the beginning, I took out the honey bottles that were in there. And so let's go ahead and see how many are in there now at the end of 1 hour. So over the course of an hour, I think we got about 2 stacks. I think the extra 3 were sort of right at the very end. So we can estimate about 2 stacks, which is a lot less than I was expecting. I think was that each module was giving us 6 every hour, somewhere around there, 6.5. So times 8 we'd expect, I think, 52. We only got 32, but yeah, I'm not sure why, but I don't think any like spawning or, I mean, the fact that we don't have a perimeter or something, I don't think that should affect it anyhow. I wonder if I hooked something up wrong. I don't think I did. Everything seems fine. Well, everyone, that is all we have time for in today's episode. If you liked the video, please go ahead and leave it a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more updates from Manifold. Thank you once again very much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.